Hello, everyone. Next up is a very important conversation, and it's our panel on art and mental health. During last year's Pixel Festival, in the early days of the pandemic, Base Coast Harm Reduction managers Stacey Marie and Farah shared some creative, practical ideas and tips about how to support your mental health. Now, in 2021, Stacey Marie has invited members of the Base Coast community to reflect on the links between art, mental health, and culture. During the conversation, they'll ask such questions as, how can the arts industry care for its workers? Can art support mental health and cultural change? Join Cindy Jiang, Crystal Precious, and Handsome Tiger for this rich and hopeful discussion.
All right, welcome everyone to Base Coast panel discussion on art and mental health. My name is Stacey Marie, and I am honored to be having this conversation. Joining me today is Hussein, also known as Handsome Tiger, who will be sharing music with us this weekend. If you have ever checked into Base Coast via the talent or volunteer gate, you have likely met Cindy there before. And then if you have probably seen Crystal Precious emceeing the Base Coast main stage or a variety of other assorted East Vancouver rave caves, we have Crystal.
Hello.
We are so thankful that you are joining us today, and we ask that you take the time today to reflect on what it means to be having this important conversation on the stolen ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Conversations about mental health are conversations about community and about relationships. And at the foundation of all of this is our individual and collective relationship with colonialism. And we invite everyone watching today to find some time this weekend to reflect on this and think about how reconciliation at the individual and community level can look like and what your role in that conversation is. I do want to note that today's conversation is going to include our guests' own lived experience and professional experience with mental health and related challenges, and also with interacting with the healthcare system. Our conversation today is not intended to replace medical advice of any kind, and we have collected some resources, including supports in case you or someone you know is struggling with their mental health, and we will link to these on the website. All right, I'm going to pass it off to each of my guests to introduce yourselves and how you are doing as we enter this, hopefully, last leg of the pandemic. So we will start with Hussein.
Hello, bonjour, and Anin. I'm Handsome Tiger, aka Hussein El Namer. My pronouns are he/him. I'm an Anishinaabe, Métis, North African music producer and DJ from Turtle Island. Born and residing in so-called Vancouver, BC. I also work in mental health as a complex care worker and a life skills worker for youth and young adults. Thanks for asking, Stacey. I'm actually keeping pretty well these days, all things considered over this last year with the pandemic and the ever-seeming state of global disarray. I would say I'm feeling pretty grounded and grateful these days to have opportunities to be able to keep active with my arts and shift into new forms of expression within that realm. Also finding a newfound strength and solidifying balance and having the time to create more than I ever have, but also take more time for breaks and self-care as I have as well. Though I feel like a lot of us are hopeful and we're starting to see the light these days, I'd be lying if I didn't mention that I've had many ups and downs as well. I'm sure you guys can all agree.
Thank you. Cindy.
Hi everyone, I'm Cindy. I use she and her pronouns. I'm a settler here over on the west coast of Canada, also on the lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. I am a manager at Base Coast, where I manage the gate or access logistics for incoming talent, staff, vendors, and volunteers. And I've been involved in the music festival scene and art scene doing this work for over 15 years. When I'm not moonlighting doing festival work, I'm actually a bit of a nerd. or a lot of a nerd. I work in the area of mental health and disability health, both in research and in the community. And I'm currently doing my PhD in critical disability studies. And I also work as a research coordinator over at York University. A lot of my research is focused on working with racialized populations and people with disabilities.
And Crystal, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous. Thank you for asking. I'm Crystal Precious. I go by she, her, and I have been a performing artist here on the stolen Indigenous lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish humans for 20 years. So I'm a veteran performer. I'm an aspiring recording artist. This is the new thing that I am trying to do. And I've had a fabulous break from nightlife and a really great opportunity to gain some perspective on things that I think are working and things that I think could change. And I'm really looking forward to integrating everything into the new world.
Great, thank you. And I'm Stacey Marie. I use she, her pronouns. I have felt very fortunate over the pandemic to return back to my parents' home, which is on Hupechesat territory on Vancouver Island. I have been the manager of Base Coast Harm Reduction Program for about 10 years. I now share this role with the amazing Farah. And Farah, if you're watching, I miss you so much. I'm also co-founder of Good Night Out Vancouver, which is a project I run with a fabulous woman named Ashton and some super amazing volunteers. And I also host a weekly radio show on Dash Radio that is all about music festival harm reduction and wellness, which you can also listen to on the Base Coast SoundCloud. And I'm doing okay. I got that second vaccine dose. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm looking forward to social connections again, and it's definitely been ups and downs as we will get into, but I do see a little bit of light at the end of this tunnel. So shall we get into our conversation?
Yeah.
So part of the inspiration for this panel is the amazing work that you are doing, Cindy, as part of your PhD, looking at the overlap of art and mental health, or to use a term that your project uses, madness and art. And so maybe we could start with you explaining for folks watching, what are you most excited about in this work? Tell us a little bit more about this work and what you hope to bring to the conversation today.
Definitely. Thanks, Stacey. So I'm working on a project with self-identified racialized mad artists to look at their experiences and their process of creating art and how it intersects with mental health. So the term mad, or more generally a word like crazy, nuts, bananas, has traditionally been used as a derogatory way towards people with mental health. And since then, there's been a movement to reclaim the word mad, or madness as we're calling it, among psychiatric survivors, consumers, mad people, and folks who have been deemed mentally ill. So this Mad Pride movement, as it's called, seeks to remember mad history and to reduce the stigma of mental illness and to advocate for mental health, and for me, more broadly, disability justice. So for me, the most exciting part about my work is the potential this research has to alter the discussion of stigma around mental health and disability, as well as the inclusion of a Black, Indigenous, and people of color lens, and to have more representation in mental health and in disability. And so the arts is such a powerful way for us to understand mental health, because people consume art and we don't necessarily need to have a language to be able to enjoy and consume art.
Mm-hmm. Cindy, I noticed that you just used the phrase disability justice in there, and some folks watching may not have heard this term, or they may not have heard it used in a conversation about mental health. And so can you build on that a little bit more?
Definitely. So disability justice is about the advocacy and activism to advance the access and inclusion for people with disabilities or disabled persons. So disability justice is an intersectional approach, and it includes various different spaces and intersections that a person holds. For example, gender, sexual orientation, racialization, education, socioeconomic status, et cetera, et cetera. And mental health is a part of disability justice, because having poor mental health or having a mental illness can be very disabling. So I don't consider myself mad, but I do consider myself crazy or nuts sometimes. I have both a cognitive disability as well as a mental health disability. And I actually very recently started to use the terms disabled racialized person. Before that, I would say that I'm a person with a disability. And I didn't use the term racialized or disabled before. And then with the pandemic coming out, I think it's a lot more important for me to be explicit in terms of the populations that I'm representing, as well as to be loud and proud and to break the stigma that, you know what, we're all a little bit mad sometimes. And so the thing is, I don't think of myself as disabled. However, society is very disabling for anyone with a disability. So that's why before I would used to say I have a disability, like I have brown eyes, but that's not really the world we live in.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that beautiful setup, an important setup. So I think where we'll open up this convo from here is a really broad kind of question for everyone today. How does mental health interact with art? Where is that intersection or overlap? And we will start with Hussein for this one.
Cool. It can interact in many ways, I feel, from music and arts therapy to individuals using it to help treat people with PTSD, or helping folks with cognitive diverse abilities. There's also the social piece around people gathering for arts and performance and events, and what that looks like around event safety, harm reduction, and keeping people safe at events, essentially. Mental health, to me, also, I feel interacts with benefits from individuals being able to practice their art. Creating can give us a great sense of connection to something that helps us give perspective of our personal purpose and how we see ourselves within the world.
Yeah.
Go for it, CP.
I mean, I feel like as far as mental health and the arts goes, the arts part hasn't been the challenge. The challenge for me personally, and for many people that I know who are artists, is having to deal with life and managing to still make art. I mean, you know, there's one time where you could be a mad artist until the cows come home, you know, like being a mad artist was expected and almost accommodated. You could be, you know, totally nuts and everybody would accommodate that. I mean, not always, but you hear about these sort of romantic stories. Nowadays, you know, we're all Renaissance humans who are essentially small businesses and need to engage in all kinds of neurotypical, digital, social, business, paperwork type processes that are not necessarily conducive to the types of personalities who want to make wild creative art projects. And it's unfortunate that column A becomes almost an obligation of column B, because as Hussein so eloquently pointed out, consuming and creating art, I think, is necessary in order to maintain mental health. At least it is for me. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg cycle. Unfortunately, at this point in the game, in our capitalist society, I mean, in Vancouver, it's almost a privilege to have time to make art. And I certainly know that that is the case all over the place, and that I'm speaking from an extremely privileged point of view. So I have no idea, you know, like there's just no sort of way to tell exactly how difficult it is for people to find that time. And yeah, so that's kind of where it's at for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Cindy.
Well, art can be very healing towards someone's health and well-being, as Hussein has said, and art is really powerful. It's the healing part that I'm thinking of right now. Doesn't always necessarily translate back to therapy or treatment, because that really speaks to a lot more of the biomedical and the psychiatry way of thinking about art as treatment and art as therapy. The art that I'm thinking about is that art can feel good, it can nourish your soul, and it's a form of self-expression. And I'm just thinking about the art that's been created with the mad artists that I've been interviewing, because I've been looking at their transcripts recently. A lot of their art is not only something beautiful, but when reading it, it's also political, activist, advocacy, and it really shows the world a different way in which we can see things.
I love that. Man, I honestly feel so honored to know each of you all the time, and watch all of you on your respective artistic, academic, personal journeys. And this next question is particularly for Crystal and Hussein, as I feel that both of you, in your own ways, have made what looks like a conscious choice to be more vocal, perhaps more political, through your art and through your performance. And I would love to know a bit more about that, like why and how has this impacted your mental health? And we'll start with Crystal.
I think that one of the things I consider to be my purpose is is the unifying and bringing together of humans to share in a common experience. And that is, an emotional experience is a bonding experience. Partying is bonding, and that the partying aspect of it is usually, when I'm talking about partying, I'm talking about connecting over art. I think that for me personally, I've really gone back and forth as to how vocal I wanted to be about my own mental health struggle. And it's gotten to the point now where we have all these different digital platforms, figuring out boundaries around how much I want to share and how much I just want to kind of be evident is a really good sort of place for me to have now finally ended up. So I think that you'll probably see a lot more of me starting to discuss my diagnosis, which I am majorly depressed. I have major depression. I've always struggled with depression and was actually diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder 20 years ago, but now we're finding out that that is not the case and that I actually have a really solid case of ADHD. So that has been incredibly new information, and I'm really looking forward to being vocal, having the opportunity to now show how I'm going to be able to navigate the world with that information. I just feel like it's important to decide what you're going to share, how you're going to share it, and know that the way that you express yourself doesn't necessarily sign you up for anything that you're not comfortable with.
Amazing. Thank you. Hussein.
Yeah, I feel that being a BIPOC artist, I've always naturally been connected to learning, advocating, and speaking up for underrepresented groups within these kind of artistic circles. Learning to understand and bring light to the systematic barriers that some of us face and how we operate within that framework has always been something that has been of interest to me. How can we hold space, be visible, and not tokenized, and also have authentic representation? Mm-hmm. I also feel it's our duty, especially as artists, DJs, or music makers, to be educated about the history and the cultures related to the music and art that we share and that we monetize or take inspiration from. In general, though, I do totally understand that it's not all artists choose to intersect their arts with their beliefs or political beliefs, which I totally get. But I do feel it's important as individuals with an audience or a platform that we find something that we're passionate about and find a way to intersect that into our work, whether it's in the public eye or private, just a way to give back to our communities. But yeah, I've always found strength and purpose in speaking and being a voice for those that need it. But definitely how that could impact my mental health. I would say that sometimes I carry that emotional weight of feeling the need to, or being asked to educate others, but then remembering that it's not always my torch to bear as a BIPOC person. I try to remember to take emotional stock when I'm reflecting on or working towards learning and solving ongoing issues that Indigenous and POC folks face. And I always just make sure to remind myself when to take those breaks, when it's possible and when it's needed for my mental health, but also taking stock and recognizing that there's privilege in that, and being able to turn away or tune out is definitely, a form of privilege for sure. But okay to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know I pointed that question at Crystal and Hussein, but Cindy, did you have any thoughts on this one?
I actually resonate a lot with you saying in terms of talking about being from a BIPOC group, especially in this last year with all the anti-Asian racism that has happened and the amount of emotional work and labor and education that is placed on people who are racialized to educate others. It is very tiring. In this last year, I've been fairly low on spoons.
Yeah.
I also kind of want to, we've been talking a bit about mental health and treatment and diagnosis, and I kind of want to just do a little bit of like my academic nerdy side here
Please do.
and talk about when I'm talking about mental health here, I'm not necessarily talking about mental illness. Mental health is on a spectrum. So some people have better mental health while others have poor mental health. And some people through our biomedical health care system have a diagnosis of mental illness, but not everyone can, want, or has access to these services. And this is particularly true amongst our racialized populations because they faced so many and continue to face so many systemic and institutional racism that why would they want to access our healthcare system, especially when mental health is seen predominantly as white. And the understanding of mental health varies so differently from group to group. Like some places and cultures, languages and cultures might not even have the same understanding of the term mental illness as we do in the English language. And so just to be kind of putting that little bit of a BIPOC racialized lens on that. And what I like about our project that we're working on with Mad Artists is that everyone is self-identified racialized and self-identified mad. And then I know I've used the term biomedical model a few times already. So just to tell everyone the flip side to that, that would be the social model of health. And so the social model includes social, cultural, environmental, and economic determinants that influences a person's health. To bring in my little nerdy side hat here.
I love the nerdy side. I definitely feel like, you know, I always sort of try to sit at the other end of the spectrum as far as respecting the academic language and sort of that academic world, but understanding that so many people don't have the chance, you know, to participate in that. And so being sort of an advocate for like more blue collar type of humans, sex workers, you know, people who are working in industries that aren't necessarily conventional. Like me, I learned a lot about my condition online, and that's why I was able to go and get re-diagnosed. So the idea that we have all these new sources of information, I think is important for us to participate in them in case we don't have the pleasure of getting to talk to someone like you.
Yeah, and it comes back to like language being so important, which is already a thread coming up here in that language, and using, you know, language that is accessible is such an important part of this conversation. And that's something Cindy is so good at, is like knowledge translation and information translation. So thank you, Cindy. I did want to ask, because as we know, this is our second summer without the large festivals, which many of us, you know, turn to for employment and also for connection and to display our art. So without community and without performing festivals during COVID, you know, working, going to, etc., and as people who are connected to these industries, how did self-care look for you throughout the pandemic? And maybe if there are any practices that emerged that you hope last beyond the pandemic, you could share them with our viewers today. And we will start with Crystal.
All right. Well, I mean, I think from the industry perspective, I think people were pretty excited to not do 17 festivals in a row in the summertime. I think a lot of the problems around sustainability as an artist came up in the sense that people got sleep, people were able to see their partners and go mountain biking in their favorite town and eat really well and not be in an airport. And, you know, not to say that festival life isn't fabulous, but what happens is you sign up for that when you're 25. You sign up for it when it's amazing and everything you want to do. And then suddenly, you know, you're 40 and it's a bit of a different situation where that is a huge, huge chunk of your income. And it's a really kind of precarious situation to be in, especially with the amount of substances that are all around you. If you're, you know, hungry, tired, stressed, anxious, all of those kinds of things. I feel like talking about the other forms of income that have come out of the pandemic and having those as being more regular sort of resources and revenue streams, the fact that artists have looked into, you know, streaming and writing and teaching and all of those kinds of things, I think are just going to hopefully become something that comes into play more than just performing live. Although I'm sure everybody is excited to perform live again, but you know, you can't do it forever. You can't do it every night forever.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be lucky to see me out past midnight, I think. I love my sleep so much now.
That's another thing though. Everyone's like, why are we out so late?
Yeah, we'll get into
that question. Yeah.
We'll get into that. Yeah. Hussein, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a bit earlier, just one thing I've tried to take into this time is just, learning to slow down and take breaks from my mental health, not just when I need them. You know, don't let it get to that point and you're like, oh, I need a break, I need to slow down. Just doing it on a regular basis and implementing that into your everyday life, I think is very important. I've also tried to be really adamant on myself to make sure I'm taking breaks from things that are not serving myself, making more time for physical activity when possible. Also, a big one for me would be just remembering to protect my emotional energy and my well-being more than ever. Deepening my communication with the people in my life, and also like checking in on my friends and making sure those people are open and have that emotional energy to take on those important conversations when we're going to have them. I think normalizing that is like very important for sure.
100%. Thank you. Cindy.
Well, prior to the pandemic, I was already fairly depressed and crazy. So then the pandemic hit and all hell broke loose. Okay, yes, actually that did. But I've been running a lot during this time to really get out of my head and into my body. And so the running, I've been doing over a solid year now. I'm trying to aim for 100 kilometers a month, which is difficult, but it is actually, it's really good for my mental health and it's been really good for my anxiety. The other thing that I've been doing is reducing my alcohol intake, because alcohol is a depressant, and let's be honest, like with major depression, it has already tanked, and then the pandemic tanked it more. And then I was like, do I really need to add a glass of wine? Yeah. Maybe sometimes, right? So that's what I've been doing in terms of self-care. Similar to Hussein, I've also been managing a lot of my emotional load and emotional labor. I'm really lucky that I've got some pretty radical BIPOC friends around me, and we're all doing a lot of advocacy and work together. And so the other thing that I've been really focused on during this last year or so is community care, because for me, self-care isn't just about me, but it's also about the care of the communities and the people that I associate with, and especially for my racialized colleagues, because we're all going through a really, really tough time this year. And so I've been working on advocacy, programming, speaking out. Like this past year is probably the first time that I'm really saying out loud, and also on this public forum, that yes, I'm a disabled person. Yes, I am a racialized person. And it's hard and it's scary, but this world has got to change.
Yeah, thank you. I am going to keep it focused on you, just because everything out of your mouth right now is amazing. But in looking at the website for your project Madness Canada, which I got lost in, there is a whole section dedicated to mad activism, which really caught my eye. And it got me thinking about how, as you've just kind of alluded to, there are times when the act of showing up in this world and taking up space and making your art and sharing your art, whether it's publicly or even just with your friends, is a form of protest. And so I wanted to ask, what role does art in general, or your art, have in changing culture? And maybe Cindy, we can go back to you and you can start by telling us a little bit more about Madness Canada.
So Madness Canada is an educational hub of resources that teaches future mental health practitioners how to, no, scratch that. It really teaches empathy. It really teaches people how to think about mental health in different ways. And then within Madness Canada, we have this whole section called Survivor Culture that is on mad art. So I don't know if people realize, but Canada has a really, really rich history in terms of mad artists, and particularly here in the Vancouver area, back as early that I can think of right now. In 1984, in the late, there was this artist called Sheila Gilhuli who was incarcerated in our Canadian systems because at the time, homosexuality was still a category in the DSM. And so Sheila created 27 female figures, sculptures, and each of these figures had Sheila's experiences of incarceration. And that was a huge exhibit here in the Vancouver art scene in 1984, which is really radical, which is very political and making a stance. And so that history is so rich and it's long-standing, and we're bringing it back with this project that we're working on. And this time around, we're putting a BIPOC lens on it, because a lot of the research that we have been doing, or that has been done, and where the original content came from Madness Canada, are from people who are predominantly white, and Canada is not all white, and we have a lot of different voices and views on this. And so for this project, really taking a stance on where racialized populations are coming from, where racialized artists are coming from, and how they're showing up and making a point in this world.
Amazing, thank you. Hussein, what is the role of your art, or art in general, in changing culture?
I feel that art plays a very vital role in changing and shaping and helping us understand culture. We don't really have to look very deep to see at the surface how much music, art, fashion, dance, all of it really ties into everyday life and its different cultures, also its communities, and it shapes our social fabric, essentially. I'm very lucky to have access to the sounds of traditional Indigenous singing and drumming, samples that I use within my productions for electronic music and film. I've personally been on a journey over the last half decade of my life into decolonizing as many aspects as possible within my life, but also most importantly for myself with the art I'm making. I feel in this case, its role helps me as an artist to reclaim and revitalize my culture, while also creating representation of that culture within social constructs, for example, dance floors, shows, TV and film, stuff like that, and other parts of the industry. But I also feel that it shapes the cultural landscape using these sounds and intentions in my music by opening up the dialogue for healing and reconciliation.
Thank you. Crystal.
I guess a lot of the stuff that I do and talk about and rap about and sing about, and the events that I come up with, or have to do with power. And as far as art goes, now that there are so many opportunities for people who are hanging out on the other side of the gate for forever. Remember when I talked about those mad artists? Guess who all those mad artists were? They were pale and male. So we have now, the gate is blown wide open, and there's opportunity for us, especially people who are in the position of running festivals and running venues and mentoring, to ensure that those with diverse voices get a fighting chance to reach the surface and to express themselves and become a part of the conversation. And that is a massive, massive priority for me.
I think that's fantastic, Crystal, because working in the music industry, I'm quite often the only racialized, let's not even talk about disabled person in the music industry. And I think for people who are organizing, and shout out to Base Coast for creating this panel, and also for artists who are thinking about who's going to be up on the stage with them in terms of power, that's where I think artists and organizers have the power to really reflect on who they're bringing up and who they want to showcase in the work that they're doing.
It's also just a good idea for sustainability. You know what I mean? It's just straight up, it's a really good idea as far as attracting and appealing and engaging with all kinds of different people so that we can have important conversations with each other.
Definitely.
My next question there's been threads of it throughout your answers, but I know that for many people, especially during the pandemic, it's been a fraught relationship with social media. And so the arts and culture industry, it tends to require a social media presence as part of that self-promotion, as part of that capitalism machine, to stay connected. However, social media and curating that online presence and content can take a toll on one's mental health. And so I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about that. Maybe some advice for younger or early career artists around navigating social media and mental health.
I have some things
Yeah.
to say. So I'm actually largely going to be removing and have removed a lot of the meat of my content to places outside of social media. So my blog, YouTube, music, etc., etc. I'm talking about things like Facebook and Instagram. I always say that social media should be like a talk show where guests appear on the talk show to promote their project. And they go through the motions and they have a little laugh with their story and they play their clip and they try to engage with their audience and then they go away. Because, there's all kinds of strategy and you got to share and be vulnerable and all that kind of stuff on social media. I really think that having a super clear purpose about why it is that you're using it, if it's a personal account, you don't need to have people on there who you're worried about impressing. If it is a business account, you make choices according to how you want to be perceived as a business. As far as putting any sort of value or you want to be mindful about exactly what it is that you're doing and whether or not you're getting caught up in sort of the self-worth comparison game. I just try to stay off of it as much as humanly possible and use that mute button. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Hussein, what about you? I know you often talk about the algorithm just crushing your posts.
Oh man, this is very true. Yeah, it's a fickle system, the whole thing. But I definitely would agree with Crystal and echo the same thing, that you don't always have to stress out about it. Just do what feels natural with it and stuff. But I would definitely also agree that I think a lot of artists feel that pressure. We all feel that pressure to stay engaged on social media, as we feel the need and necessity to use it to get our work out there. But also, I think it's just important that we be mindful and remember that we don't always have to give into that pressure of showing that we're always grinding or that there's always something on the go, because it's very easy to get lost in that whole facade too. How much time are you spending on social media versus actually doing the work you want to be doing?
Yeah, for real.
So don't get derailed by that, I feel. Also, to echo again what Crystal said, the big one is just also comparing our self-worth to others. Don't look at other people's accounts and be like, oh, look at all this stuff they're getting done. And I think that's a big thing to just, I've also had to reel myself back in at times too, and just remind myself that everyone's got their own process and everyone's doing their thing. Just keep working on what I'm working on. But I think to kind of tie it up for myself, I would say that I think the main thing is just finding balance in between planning and posting the art content that you're wanting to promote as best as you can, to intermingle it with the other aspects that you do feel comfortable sharing it within your life. But you also don't have to feel that stress about always posting if it doesn't feel right, or having to share personal stuff at all if you don't, or political stuff. There's no pressure to do any of that. I think just what feels natural, for sure.
If I could add on to that, I feel like it's so important when you're finding that balance to not forget that these corporations don't care about us. And so so many of my friends, like the biggest coup that's happened and the biggest reason why a lot of myself and my contemporaries have been like, F this place, is because we're not even allowed to use the word burlesque. Like I can't promote a burlesque show on Facebook anymore. So many of my friends who have spent tens of thousands of dollars creating content for these platforms have been booted off in the name of conservative, colonial, what's the word? Censorship of female bodies and fat bodies and queer bodies. So the bait and switch is always a possibility. And I think it's really important what you said, to keep the balance and to make sure you're not spending more time making social media content than recording songs or whatever it is that you do, because it's easy. They want you to be on there until you die.
Totally.
I'm going to put a bit of a nerdy... I'm going to put a bit of a nerdy stance on this when it comes to social media, because also that's also my hat I'm wearing. 100% of our recruitment for this project that we did was via social media. And so, which is really cool, because typically when you want to find people who are mad or who have mental health experiences, you go to different organizations or listservs where people have engaged with mental health or they've engaged with mental health services. But it was because of social media and because of hashtags that we were able to connect a whole community where many of our participants don't have diagnoses and they're all racialized. And so social media also has a whole different avenue where we were able to connect to people that don't want to have a diagnosis, that don't want a label, don't want that stigma, don't want that fear. And then also in terms of at least my social media as a non-performer, I follow hashtags that mean something to me. So when I go onto my social media, it's a lot more about for me, mental health and advocacy. So I learn in those different communities. And so it not just for artists, but I thought it was kind of cool that we were able to get all these people via social media who
that's
don't
dope. That's a dope perspective. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's great. That comes back to just like, keeping in check with things that do serve you and things that don't, essentially, right? If you're filling your feed with stuff that's positive, that's going to uplift your experience while you're on social media as well.
Well, and again, it means that the gatekeepers are asleep or hopefully off somewhere and won't come back. You know what I mean? Like, definitely good to remember all of the things that it does gift us with. Thank you.
Totally.
Yeah, and there are
tongue in cheek. I am the gatekeeper at Base Coast.
Perfection.
Yeah, I think to echo everything that was said here, I think there are definitely platforms where you can curate your experience a bit more easily than other ones. And to kind of bring it back to mental health, I now follow a lot of folks who are neurodivergent, who, do have a formal diagnosis or don't, and are just out there putting out so much education that I personally have found so helpful. And so to curate that experience, and also artists who I might not ever be exposed to their drawings or digital art, and it has brought me due to social media. So it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it's like, use it to promote the stuff that you do. And if the stuff that you do is social media content, that's great, and I feel like TikTok has really taken off as a medium, as opposed to, what I'm saying? It's just being wary of creating something on social media that doesn't exist.
For sure. So everyone on this panel has a connection to the arts and to the performance industry in some capacity. And so to kind of bring our conversation full circle, how can these industries better support the mental health of the people working in it? I know, Crystal, you started with this great analogy around it being like chicken or egg, like which comes first. And so, yeah, if I could put it back to you folks, what can these industries do to better support your mental health and the mental health of artists or others working in the industry? And we'll start with Hussein.
For sure. I feel that we need to start making it the standard to have more of these conversations and panels within all music, arts, and events in the industry. Also, I think all festivals in general can just continue doing the work to create more initiatives that can help fund and support this kind of work. so that people like yourselves can have access to the resources, have the tools that they need to be sharing them with the individuals within those industries. I also think it's super important that we lower the barriers for application processes for BIPOC, queer / non-binary and two-spirit folks, or also for folks with language and reading and writing barriers. It's just, yeah, making things a little bit more easy for those folks. And I think the most importantly is just to continue, if we're in this position, is to continue to use our privileges to advocate for folks and continue doing the work destigmatizing mental health in general.
Yeah. Yes. Yes to all of that.
Yes. We'll go to Crystal first, and then we'll go to Cindy.
I mean, I think for me, just ensuring that people are really aware of the stigma and the internalized stigma that can happen when someone has a mental disability. For me, learning about my new diagnosis was extremely good for my self-esteem, because suddenly I had all these answers as to why I was struggling with certain problems. Whereas before I thought, oh, well, these are just like character defects, right? And they can really appear that way sometimes when you're working with a team. So it's good information to know about, certain patterns and symptoms, and also to share your own experiences. And that's something I'm really looking forward to doing more of within the industry.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you and I know you're super early on in this journey though, like what would a tangible tool could that be? Like, how do you see if you were brought onto a new team and they could better support your accessibility needs, like how could they get that information?
I think that the thing that has been really helpful for me is just strengths and weaknesses, and just also, starting to group different strengths and different weaknesses with different diagnosis. So for example, when I say, hey, I'm neurodiverse, that means, I need to have a bunch of different windows open all the time. And, repetitive tasks are hard for me, but being honest about that and not having people say, ooh, you're just trying to get out of the boring work. You know what I mean? Like, just to be really open when people are telling you the truth about what they're going to be good at and what is probably best for someone else to take on.
Yeah, and be open to trying new things and doing
totally.
things a little differently. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Cindy.
In terms of how these industries can support mental health and disability justice, and I'm also going to put in increased accessibility for these music festivals and in the music industry. I think that, I do agree with Hussein. We have to bring arts-based grants to be in a way that is a lot more accessible for everyone to be able to apply. Mm-hmm. I am doing my PhD and I am writing these grants and I am in the academic train, and there is so much jargon in there. How can others be expected to be going through the same rigorous process, to have the same language and terminology to do this work? And then in terms of working with BIPOC artists or BIPOC groups, don't, for the love of God, on your application, ask what type of injustices you've been faced with. An application process should not be the oppression Olympics of why you should be getting the money. You should be getting the money because you are an artist and that you're doing the work, not because you can outline some type of story or sob story so you can get the money. I think that is definitely one of the ways in which the industry can better support mental health. And then also in terms of working with accessibility, looking to make sure that music festivals and industries are accessible to not only people with physical disabilities, but cognitive disabilities, hearing, audio, visual. We can have this industry be a lot more open to people who are a lot more than white, abled, and with hearing and visual abilities.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, that goes along with stigma reduction, right? It's just like all of it together.
Totally. It's like, you already know these people are racialized. We don't need to know some other story, or like within the application process, I should reiterate, like I definitely can relate with you on that, Cindy. I've had to do some writing on specific grants. It's like, okay, we know this is a BIPOC focus grant. Why should I have to speak about why my mom was a 60 scoop survivor? You know what I mean?
Like, ideally, that stuff isn't happening anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it just
Exactly.
feels so inappropriate.
Isn't
Yeah.
the fact that I am racialized enough to know that I have faced like all of these systemic inequities, isn't that in itself just enough?
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree.
More compassion in general, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for sharing that. I think a lot about, I had on my radio show, I had a Coast Salish educator. His name is Len Pierre. He's amazing. He's a member of the Cutsy Nation. And we were talking about festivals, you know, how decolonization can look in festivals. And he really said that this industry is set up to be so creative and take risks more so than any other sector. And so I think about this a lot, in that it is an industry where we are encouraged to be creative, yet we sometimes replicate the same barriers and hierarchies as other more corporate environments, which doesn't really make any sense. So I think that there's so much more we could do, especially around supporting artists and even just volunteers or crew who are neurodivergent or, you know, speak more than one language, and just better support their presence at our events. I am also going to do a little bit of plug around supporting the mental health of this industry. Of course, through harm reduction measures are such a strong gateway to mental health, to having non-alcoholic options at events more so than ever. People shouldn't only have the options of Red Bull or pop if they're not drinking. There's so many good spirits, and fake beers that you could bring in. And yeah, especially harm reduction programming that looks at the inequities, the greater societal inequities and barriers is so important. And also I want to give a plug for daytime events, maybe, like.
Yeah, they're fabulous.
Yeah.
And then you get to go to bed and get up the next day and you're like, oh.
Yeah, the work, of course, that like public disco is doing here, you know, on the land we call Vancouver is so important, and really mixing up the game in how all ages, they're not totally alcohol free, but, you know, daytime options where there's other drink options as well is so great. As we look at wrapping up our conversation, because as expected, the time has flown by, I did want to do one more round where you folks can kind of share any final thoughts about this topic, anything you want to promote. And we'll start with Crystal.
Okay, I'm prototyping my new talk about body neutrality, which is a new sort of mentality, school of thought that removes the focus from, you know, either loving your body or hating your body and just not giving a shit. That's sort of the idea in a nutshell. And so, you know, talking a lot about how fat phobia is, you know, stems from racism and sort of the history of all the misinformation that has been widely believed in order to fight this totally accepted form of discrimination. So I'm doing that. I've got 4 dates set up for that. Yeah, that's sort of my main thing that I'm doing right now.
Where can we learn more about
those
yes,
4 days? Please come and learn about it at crystalprecious.ca.
Nice.
Great. Hussein.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say miigwech, and thank you to Base Coast and you guys for having me. It was a super insightful conversation and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Yeah, I have a lot on the go right now. Stay tuned for a bunch of new music for myself in the rest of this summer and 2021. I have an EP coming out on July 16th. Right after that, I have some remixes for Ray Black and Phrase coming out this summer as well. And I have 2 more EPs planned for late summer and into fall. Couple other projects I would say check out is Audio Social, which is a thing I do with a crew of friends. We have like our year mix series coming up in July. Someone very special friend from the Base Coast alumni doing our mix for that. And I also want to plug Nagamo, which is an all Indigenous publishing company that I've been working with over the last year, and they work to connect producers and content creators with Indigenous composers. And you can check them out at nagamo.ca. And obviously all my music stuff will be on my social media.
Right. So we just search Handsome Tiger.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
totally.
I've been looking forward to that Ray Black remix for so long. I'm so happy it's coming out soon.
Yeah,
Cindy, how can we learn more about your work and Madness Canada?
So this next year, really, I'm focused on I'm back into the books. I'm so excited for when music festivals are back, so I can go back to moonlighting my other life. But for those who want to learn more about mental health, education, resources, opportunities, funding, or more about Mad History and Art, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Madness Canada, and our website is madnesscanada.com. And then we also have, or my supervisor also has a pretty fantastic podcast called Crazy Making Podcast, which really talks about like the more normalizing, like what is mental health from, I guess, more people who are not in the academic arena. So that would be really interesting for folks who want to learn more about mental health and not from a biomedical view.
Great.
Oh, and my last thing I want to say is that before we end off is that everyone's a little bit crazy and everyone's a little bit mad. We just have to find out the crazy and mad that's acceptable to us.
Thank you. That is a beautiful note to end on. I do want to, as things are opening up slowly and surely, we will be seeing more events, especially in the second half of summer. I want to encourage people to check out the harm reduction page of the Base Coast website in case you need to brush up on your safer party skills. If you are a venue owner, goodnightoutvancouver.com, you can get linked with free sexual violence prevention training. And then my weekly radio show, the best way to learn all about that is the Instagram account, which is sanctuary_radio. We are going to rebroadcast this panel on that show. So if you want to ask your friends to watch it, you think they might be interested in something we talked about today, please send them that way because we will be rebroadcasting it. So I want to thank each of you so much for joining me today. You all brought your amazing, beautiful, important perspectives, and I love any excuse to see your faces. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.